Hello and welcome back to the Concept Checkup. The point of Concept Checkup is to dive into the Warframe forums or other source, look for a community-made Warframe concept, and talk about it. For the purpose of Concept Checkup, I will use my custom-built evaluating method known as AS. Without further ado, let's begin the checkup. For today's checkup we have Havoc, the dual-element Warframe. Havoc was created by DemonStar on the Warframe forums, who created previous Warframe concepts such as Furion and Henya. Havoc is designed to be an elemental damage dealer, although he has elemental powers that are affected by energy color like chroma. Havoc is not designed to be played as a tank, but rather, a damage dealer. Like his name implies, Havoc is capable of wielding two elements at once, rather than just one, but Havoc's elements are still affected by energy color, just like chroma. However, Havoc is also capable of dealing combined elemental damage if he is controlling two different elements, meaning he can deal blast damage if he has heat and cold damage on him. Although Havoc currently does not have stats, but he does have a passive. For every enemy that Havoc kills with elemental damage, he gains plus 1% power strength for 9 seconds, up to a cap of plus 10% power strength. Passives are intended to be minor but handy buffs to have, and this is no exception. There's really nothing to berate this passive about, getting almost a free power drift just for killing enemies is quite nice. Havoc's first ability is Elemental Projectile. Tapping the ability causes Havoc to fire a projectile, alternating between his left and right hand, dealing damage based on whatever element he has. Holding the ability causes Havoc to combine both elements he has and fire a projectile, increasing damage by 50%. However, if Havoc has two of the same element active, such as Toxin on both his left and right hands, then the damage is increased by 100%. Although it's rather difficult to determine exactly how powerful Havoc could be given his lack of stats, having the ability to shoot projectiles of combined elemental damage is both a positive and a negative. It's good because if the damage is high enough, then Havoc wouldn't require his weapons to have corrosive damage, which has been the meta staple for years now. Additionally, ever since Heat procs got buffed to strip armor, it's possible that Havoc could be assigned grade to Ember, considering that Havoc could simply equip Heat on his left and right hand, and fire projectiles with 100% increased damage. However, this is bad because again, if the damage is high enough, then Havoc could potentially outpace Ember as the fire Warframe, not to mention that because corrosive has been the mandatory element to take for as long as anyone can remember, there doesn't seem much reason to take other combined elements on Havoc such as magnetic or viral. It entirely depends on how good the stats for this ability are, and again, there are none present currently. Havoc's second ability is Whispora, which is a toggle skill. Havoc can deactivate Whispora at any time, but otherwise can switch from a buff that increases max health and elemental damage of secondaries, to a buff that increases max shields and elemental damage of primaries. This applies to nearby allies as well. Being able to switch between two buffs is awesome, but I would say that the percentage buff to health and shields would be better changed to be a flat amount such as 500 instead of a percentage. Keeping the buffs as a percentage only means that Warframes with a high amount of health or shield capacity such as Inaros, Nidus, and Hildren are the only ones that can really make the most of this buff, especially considering that the 15% buff cannot be increased with power strength. This appears to be a minimal buff to shields and health except for Warframes with high base stats that can really make the most of that 15% buff. Otherwise, Whispora looks and sounds interesting. Havoc's third ability is Armaments Augment. Upon activation, Havoc will grant his equipped weapon additional elemental damage based on his active elements. Dual-wielded weapons will be given the element on Havoc's left and right hand respectively. One-handed weapons will be given the element on Havoc's right hand, and weapons that require both hands to wield will be given the combined element of Havoc's elements if possible. The active weapon in question gains increased magazine capacity, fire rate, and ammo efficiency. Given that Armaments Augment flat-out increases your DPS by buffing fire rate, mag capacity, and ammo efficiency while at the same time being capable of giving something such as corrosive damage to a foeman or etc., I'm really tempted to call this overpowered even though there are no stats to go off of. Throwing a Riven mod into the mix would make things even crazier, which again brings up the question, because armor has been the way it is for years now, why would you want to take any combined element that isn't corrosive, besides for specific builds? Having such a drastic boost to DPS would likely also be noticeable on dual-wielded status weapons such as the Eximity Prime. Again, it's hard to say for certain without stats. Havoc's fourth ability is Elemental Pillar. Havoc casts a magic circle on the ground which he can charge up by using his elemental projectile on it. Once charged, the magic circle starts draining energy over time, and drains more energy the longer it's active. The magic circle deals all enemies that enter it, and can be picked up like Volt's shield. Additionally, more than one magic circle can be made at a time, but each will drain energy. Havoc can tap 4 to drop his elemental pillar at his location, or he can hold 4 to create an explosion of elemental energy, dealing massive damage. Lastly, Havoc can also tap 1 to cast his elemental pillar in a beam that lasts 2 seconds, or hold 1 to release it as an even more devastating beam, but does not last 2 seconds. That's quite a lot of information to take in. To put it short, Havoc can create AoE circles that drain energy but damage enemies inside that. He can pick them up, and he can either deal damage around himself or in a line after picking one up. This has quite a lot of practical application, because this gives Havoc options in terms of how he wants to kill enemies. He could either jump into a crowd himself and use his elemental pillar as a nuke, or he could release it as a laser and snipe enemies from a distance. However, it seems that having multiple elemental pillars active at once isn't exactly a good idea purely because of the energy drain it can cause, but then again, it's difficult to say without concrete stats. With that in mind, here are Havoc's scores. Despite being somewhat of a side grade of Chroma, Havoc appears to bring a lot of interesting gameplay to the table, although some aspects of it look to be completely broken. For my personal thoughts, Havoc is the kind of Warframe I truly would like to see in game, even though it's essentially an alternative to Chroma, but without the survivability. However, Havoc would likely only be using heat and corrosive elements over everything else purely because of the anti-armor meta we have, and that's not really a good thing for a Warframe to be one-dimensional in terms of playstyle. Regardless, Havoc looks great, but he does need tweaks, as well as stats finalization. Thank you for watching.